So, if you don't know, the Stellar Blade controversy has been stupid, to say the least. The the overall response towards what has happened has been something that, um, honestly, should have more irons in the fire, if you will, rather than what exactly has happened. Um, Despite the fact that so many people essentially were defending Stellar Blade for essentially going against the grain of the current video game industry of having an attractive female character coming out from an indie industry studio like multiple other indie studios that have basically made bank off of the fact of just giving gamers what it is that they want, promising what it is that they're going to deliver on, and then actually delivering it, should have been held with so much praise it's ridiculous. But at the last moment, right at the fucking finish line, they tripped up. Sony decided to censor a lot of what happened within Stellar Blade by covering up different aspects of the character's costume, as well as toning down the blood within the series. Something that was generally promised upon it before it was released. So you got to see all of this stuff in the demo, as well as the day one edition of the game before it got its 1.2 patch. So to actually get Stellar Blade in the way that it was promised, you have to get the game before it was even patched, or if you got a freaking review, like a review copy or something like that, because all of that had what was promised. But as soon as the game came out in general release, it got patched and all of that stuff goes away. That should have been met with the exact same attentiveness that Stellar Blade acquired when it first was being talked about in release. And to me, that is the true issue with video games. The fact that you have so many people who just use this shit as mouthpiece, like they're just mouthpieces, right? They just use certain topical topics to just constantly berate everyone with what it is. Like, oh, look at them doing it again. They try to make it political. This is what the leftists doing and whatnot. They'll try to sit there and turn it around for like, what it is that's happening in terms of like the DEI, Sweet Baby Inc., all that bullshit. They'll use it for, just to sit there and build content for themselves. But as soon as the actual, as soon as like when the chips are down, and you need this shit to be focused on and studied to ensure that essentially these consumers that are essentially the only reason that games are exist in the first place, for them to actually generally need to fight back, or like a means for them to be able to fight back, or for them to do something to counteract this dumb shit from happening, much like Sony deciding to censor a game and it working, they got nothing. They got absolutely nothing. Do these people tend to, like, think about a lot of the people that you looked at or listened to in terms of bringing out this information for stuff. Do any of them have suggestions on what to do? Do any of them speak on, what's an alternative means of, sticking it towards the game developers or the companies that essentially hire consultant firms like Sweet Baby Inc. and whatnot? Do they just use it for content and then talk about it and like, oh, look, they're getting destroyed because a Twitter feed said, I don't want to buy a game from this company anymore. Oh, I got 20 minutes of me yelling about this shit with no type of other context behind this. Let's look at the Twitter thing. You can go on Twitter, look at it yourself, but look at me, look at it. Oh, we got destroyed. Dumb shit. It's all completely dumb to me. And I feel bad because, again, I am upset at the fact that happened to Stellar Blade. Anyone who bought that game, I feel bad for the fact that essentially you were promised something, and then essentially they took it away at the last minute. What it was that they promised you was taken away at the last minute. They didn't inform anyone that they were going to censor everything. You found that out the hard way. Even if you're listening to this and it's your first time hearing about it, that is what happened. You can look it up. They censored the game. They toned down a lot of the costumes and things like that. And if you're thinking to yourself, well, even if you like look at the images that they toned down, a lot of it, I would agree with you, isn't that far off or that big of a deal of a tone change. It's not that big. It's not that bad of a tone change. I do feel bad about the fact that the blood not splattering over them, because that honestly looked cool as a gimmick, yet it being removed completely, I feel is just bad. Like I can see if it like they toned it down a little bit to where it's not as excessive as it was for the demo, I'd still, I can still understand that. But it's like removed completely, so you don't even get like the blood splatter at all. But again, it's like, I would agree with you that it seems that the general changes that they made were very superficial, much like, again, the costumes and the blood and gore. There's like a lot of that is very superficial. And I would agree with you. There's like, hey, it's not that big of a deal. You can still enjoy the game. True. But here's the shocking truth that a lot of people tend to always remiss. If it's not that big of a deal, why change it? You see the problem? The game was being released. It was being bought, pre-order sales, all of this good shit, with the idea that it was going to have all that stuff in it. So no one was against getting that at all. They already knew out the gate that that was going to be a part of the game. That was something they wanted to buy, and it was something that they wanted to play. Nothing wrong with that. Remember fucking the Calypso Project? A game made by the people who made Dead Space? No one played that. That game came out and it was crap. But it has gore, blood, guts, horror shit, everything that they promised. It just turned out to be a bad game. Was any of that censored? Did it have an issue of being censored? No, it was exactly what was promised. It's just what they promised and the end result was bad. So with Stellar Blade, it's like, why? If you were more than capable of actually giving people what it is that you promised, why renege on it? Unless you had an agenda to push, or to just make yourself essentially associated with, which is what Sony has become now. And the disgusting factor is that the majority of people who sat there all day long behind all of these fucking platforms screaming, this is why they're mad. This is why you got these blue-haired dumbasses sitting there screaming about, you can't look like this. This is actually based off of a real-life model. You can look like this, but you can't put down the fucking Twinkies to try. It's it's ridiculous that essentially you just have all of this attention, fanfare, free publicity, and so much support behind something for just being exactly what it is. Hell, the gameplay looked amazing. I love the fact that it doesn't have the fucking stamina bar. A fast action-paced game that essentially isn't exactly like a From Software game, because I am tired of looking at From Software games being copied, but just a good fast-paced action-adventure game that's not like Bayonetta or Devil May Cry, but instead it's a bare bones back to like 2000s kind of not hack and slash, but kind of a good adventure action game that has all the elements in it that just seems like a fun, interesting game. Cool little character, story, can't wait to find out if I ever play it. But, all the good stuff that you would want in a video game, and honestly came from an indie developer that's showing up a bunch of the AAA developers. All the ingredients to make a hot nigga pie. And yet, last minute, censored it. And it's like, why wasn't that met with the exact same fanfare as the people who were upset at the blue-haired weirdos talking about, why does he look like that? She can't look like me. You got outraged over that. I would love if you were still outraged over the small censorship, because it shouldn't happen. I love the fact that you had a bunch of people who essentially, they decided to hit Sony where it hurt by canceling their PlayStation Network accounts. Because until people realize that essentially stopping these people from gaining money is really the only way that they're going to pay attention to shit, you're never going to get anything done. And you have just way too many fucking people just doing shit to where it's like, oh, I made a petition, sign a petition to get it back. And it's like, that's never gonna fucking happen. The only way to stop this shit is if you people just stop buying these fucking games. Now you see that even the indie shit ain't safe. And what is it, like Sony is still going in censoring a bunch of other shit that's like related to Japanese anime girls. Yet the Japanese market was one of the biggest supporting markets for the PlayStation in the first place, which is what allowed it to do so well within games. Yet now they've completely turned their back on them, and they're following everything imaginable within the notion of essentially how Californians think. And as I've said before, California is not the world. It's its own place. It's its own magical fairy fucking land that just makes no sense whatsoever. And when you surround yourself with a bunch of weirdos and crazy people who don't understand what regular people want, you're going to constantly make a bunch of shit that's for weirdos and crazy people who who will never buy something that you essentially are marketing to something that for regular people to want. And so that's why you've had an abundance of studio closures, an abundance of games not selling, an abundance of millions of dollars being spent on garbage that just does not do well because you focus and listen to these crazy people. And so even with the small notion of censoring Stellar Blade the way that they did, this has a tidal wave effect of messing with games within the future. This will always be a problem. You cannot give them an inch. They will take a mile. If they censor Stellar Blade like this and you people still decide to buy it, they will censor other games. If you think that they're just going to stop at censoring, they're just going to go right back around to the whole DEI bullshit. They're just going to call it something else. You're going to see more companies pop up that are similar to Sweet Baby Inc. that, again, just won't be called Sweet Baby Inc. And all of this stems from you allowing, or these people essentially taking a back seat towards the fact that, yes, Stellar Blade does look like a fun game. It still has amazing gameplay. The graphics look really good. The concept is really cool and solid. And it seems a hell of a lot more fun to play than any other current game that exists. But allowing Sony to go ahead with their censorship like they did, and they've done this shit before. They censored Devil May Cry within certain regions because it's like an ass crack that pops up on a Devil May Cry 5 game and whatnot. They've censored so many other fucking indie games that have came out, whether or not it's about like showing attractive women and whatever. They've done this again and again and again, and until you sit there and let them know this is not shit that we play you for. We play you because you actually have games that we want to play, unlike Xbox. And as long as you allow us to play the games in their entirety the way that they should be played, we got no problem. We'll keep buying the PlayStation. But you are supported by so many people that just can't see the forest for the trees. Yes, you won the fight on Stellar Blade having an attractive female character. But don't you understand that by having an attractive female character, it being promoted and showcased and done in a way to be like, you're gonna get all of this. And then when you finally get it, it's not what it is that they promised you. And then you still just go, but I mean, they still gave us some of it. You're an idiot. You're a fucking idiot. There's no way around that. You're being dumb. You're being dumb right now because you would rather accept something than nothing. But the thing is that you have to understand, you hold the power. You are the ones, if in a mass quantity a bunch of people decided, oh, we're not going to get this at all, then it's like, oh, Sony would have had no choice but to get rid of the file of essentially trying to make them censor everything. They would have told them, yeah, because we decided to back you because we saw the huge fanfare behind you. Good, remember, Sony was all in to support Stellar Blade, because why wouldn't they be? It had ridiculous pre-sale orders. So why wouldn't they be in support of that? Yet they censored it. Fucking Grand Theft Auto had a goddamn trailer where it showed bitches twerking on top of cars, and people know that they're going to buy that game. There's going to have ridiculous shit in it because it's Grand Theft Auto. But this gets censored. Again, it's like these people, they're picking their battles, and the problem is that they're going to lose in the long run because they're picking the wrong shit to focus on. You have so many people so obsessed with how video games, like female characters, look that a lot of them aren't even noticing about a bunch of the patents that a lot of these gaming companies are buying up in order to do shit to video games later on. And then you have a perfect example of what happened with Stellar Blade, where Sony took it upon themselves to censor the game, despite the fact that the game was promoted to be this sexy, edgy, bloody mess. And they didn't give you that. Do you not see how that's a problem? How that's a dilemma in the long run? How that can affect video games forevermore if you allow it, which is what you're doing? So it's just, for someone like me, it's a double-edged sword, because again, the game still seems like it's fun and it's cool to play and whatnot. You're not really losing that much out of what it is that they censored. But at the same time, them censoring it at all is the problem. That is a bad thing, regardless of how great the female character looks with being an actually attractive female character. The fact that Sony took it upon themselves to censor the shit because they just fucking could spells trouble for the industry as a whole. And until these people essentially get off their ass with their platform, because they for damn sure bigger than fucking me, until they get off their ass and essentially let these people know this is a problem. This is not something to look at and go, well, I kind of get it, I kind of don't. No, this is a fucking problem. Until you essentially acknowledge that, then we are going to forever have this problem where game is promoted and presented and talked about because it's going one way. And then upon it coming out, oh, it's a totally different thing entirely. Now, I just, fuck. This is what they do. Everyone passed the buck, and now they're talking about that dumbass Star Wars game on Ubisoft. Who wants to spend like 160 on a fucking Ubisoft Star Wars game starring an ugly girl? I don't give a fuck about that. Stellar Blade was censored. It was promised to be actually a groundbreaking dope series, but it got censored. Why are people not talking about that? Well, look at what Star Wars, man. I don't give a fuck. Star Wars ain't relevant. This is not don't buy that. You don't buy that, they're gonna stop making that. So don't even worry about it. Don't show attention to it. Who gives a fuck if it's ugly? Get off of it. Stellar Blade is actually existing. It is actually out. It actually came out and people pre-ordered it because they told you it was this thing. But then when you got it, it was something else. That's a problem. That's something that needs to be talked about. I don't give a fuck if you have gameplay footage or you want to show people that you're playing and enjoying the game. I don't give a fuck. That's a problem. That's a major problem that needs to be talked about and discussed. That's how you win the culture war. That's how you stop this shit at its core. You don't just power through it and just talk about aesthetics. No, you have to get to the nitty gritty. These companies will do whatever they can to whatever they can for whatever fucking reason. And this is a prime example of it. And for something to have this much attention and be talked about this much, there should be far more outrage than what it is that it got. It's just annoying to essentially be aware of this shit and just know that essentially it's like, yeah, you're kind of ahead of the curve. And that's not a good thing when essentially everyone else is just backpedaling behind you. And wait until another video game essentially does something similar to this, to where it's on a massive level. By that point, it'll be too late. Fuck. Grand Theft Auto would be a prime example of this, where everything that the game has been showcasing in terms of the I misspoke, in terms of the Miami, Florida aspect and what the fucking trailer has shown you, could easily be censored because, you know, fuck you guys. You're already going to get a female protagonist, so, you know, who knows what it is that they're going to take away, what they're going to add, and what they're going to, it not make sense to have. But again, if you don't stop them from having the idea that they can get away with this shit now, then the game that you really, 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 really want to play and can't wait for, that's going to just bite you in the ass. So, I don't know what else to tell you aside from the fact that it's like, you know, you fight with your wallet. You fight with your wallet and you just keep screaming about this shit for whomever and whatever might listen to you. Notice I said what. Otherwise, you're just gonna constantly be met with this ridiculous bullshit that we currently have, where just so many people are just jumping on anything that they can in order to get the likes, the views, and the attention or whatnot, that they're speaking out against something, but they're generally not doing anything. So, yeah. I got a book coming out. I guess that's what this was about. Yeah. I just wish people cared. or more importantly, had a fucking standard to have for content and stuff that they've enjoyed. It's just sad, you know? It's just sad. Just so sad. But yeah, that's all I want to talk about. All right.